You're listening to Up to the Mic. If you want to learn about the struggles and triumphs of starting a business, performing for sold-out arenas, or inspiring those you lead, Up to the Mic is the show for you. Throw on some headphones and get ready to listen as our host, Vinny Hale, sits down to showcase the stories of those who deserve their stories be told. From young entrepreneurs to critically acclaimed musicians and so much more, Vinny helps compile a season of interviews that inspire listeners to follow in the footsteps of his guest. Welcome back to another episode of Up to the Mic, everybody. We're so excited to have you here to listen into this story. I've got Paul here on the show with us, and he's going to tell us all about what he's up to these days. Paul, thank you so much for being here.
Oh yeah, thank you so much, Vinny. It's I've seen a few episodes and it's very entertaining. So I'm really happy.
I know
to be here.
Next time we'll have to do another one of these episodes in a few months and check in on how things are going with both of our lives. You're in Austin, right? I'm upset we didn't get together in person, but we did it on short notice, and I'm glad we're together nonetheless. So we'll have to do that soon.
Yeah, for sure. I'm down. I've only done. We did one news piece that was in person, but I think the more podcasts that we do, I'm really entertaining the in-person feel. I feel like that's a different thing, but we'll start off here and then eventually we'll get together.
Perfect.
100%.
Give me a reason to write it off. Both of our accounting background.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, Paul, okay, take us back to the beginning. If anybody is tuning in, you've listened to an episode before, you know the deal. We always like to know the person behind the story first and foremost. So let's start there. Tell me about your upbringing, where you're from, what you like to do growing up, and then we'll jump into all of the exciting things that you're up to these days.
Yeah. Well, real quick, when I was talking to our team about doing this show, I told them that we're going to be doing a background on me, and our team was like, well, yeah, thankfully, because you never talk about kind of where you came up and stuff. I've gotten that a few times, so I'm really happy to kind of talk about that side of the story, I guess. But yeah, I grew up in El Paso. I had a really loving family. I'm very, very thankful to God for that. I'm one of three children, so all boys. So that kind of took you'd think that would take a toll on my parents, specifically my mom. But thankfully, my mom is extremely steadfast. She's the strongest person I know, and my dad is just an absolute grinder. So them two together, they kind of raised us into who we are today. Very big on hard work and just grinding it out. They had their own business, so I kind of got exposed to entrepreneurship really from the get-go. And then my grandfather had his own business as well. So really grew up in a loving family that was heavy on the hard work and heavy on entrepreneurship. And then I think for me, always wanted to be a scientist when I grew up. I actually had a makeshift laboratory when I was a kid, so I'd always be kind of messing around with some stuff, trying to come up with quote unquote experiments. I really enjoyed that because it kind of allowed me to kind of at least try to bring things to fruition. I think about something, I'm gonna try to have it come to fruition in some way. And then went to Eastwood High School. Really enjoyed that. And that's where I kind of really leaned into, cross country and track and field. I was very competitive in that space. Thankfully, I was never really good at any other sports, but I remember one time I had a bad basketball practice and decided to, every time you missed a shot, our coach would have us run a lap. And he told me, he's like, hey, you missed everything so far. And you keep running these laps, but you're not tired at all. So there was a little bit of stamina indications there. Fast forward, I was running on a treadmill here in Austin, and my uncle was like, hey, we need to get you in a race. So that's where it started. And, for a long time, track and field and cross country was my entire life. I really, really enjoyed it. Was going to entertain, going, running in college, but I ended up deciding, hey, I think, academics is going to be, focusing solely on academics is going to be better. I wasn't good enough to do D1 or anything like that. But yeah, so I decided to kind of let go of the track and field and cross country thing. But that competitive nature stayed within me for sure. I learned that obviously through my parents, but track and field and cross country was a huge boost for me, at least in the competitive space. And so after that, after high school, I decided to start applying for colleges and stuff. I was class president senior year, but when I started to apply, my grades weren't that good because I never really cared about grades all that much. I just always thought like, hey, if I'm making 70s, then I'll
Get the diploma.
That's good enough for me because I got to stay on the track. Right, exactly. Like a bare minimum. And so when it came time to apply for colleges, I was getting denied by, I got denied by the University of Houston, and I believe like a few other institutions. So that really beat me down a little bit. But then I remember I got a letter from Texas A&M, and it said, it had a big envelope. So I was like, okay, I got accepted. But then there was a smaller envelope in there. So the big envelope was saying, like, yeah, you're in, congratulations. But the small envelope said, hey, okay, hold on a second. Like, sure, you can be in, but there were 40,000 people who applied. 10,000 got automatic, got accepted. I don't know if it was automatic or not, but 10,000 got accepted. But 350 of the 30,000 that were going to be told no, only 350 of those people are going to be allowed into this something called the Gateway program. And so that means that you guys literally objectively did not have the grades to get in here. But there's something about you guys, and that's what we were told. There's something about you guys. There's some sort of indication where we should objectively tell you no. But the subjective part of whoever you guys are is why we're going to say yes. So you guys need to come in for a summer session. It's called the Gateway program. You'll be there for 5 weeks in the summer. And I'll never forget, Dr. King is the person who like headed up the Gateway program. And she said, prove to us what we think you can do. We think you can do it, but we have no evidence for the fact for the idea that you can do it, meaning succeed academically. So I became an absolute book nerd. I lived in the library. That's all I thought about. I would wake up thinking about school and I would go to the library and I wouldn't come back until late at night. And I eventually got into A&M, and I was very thankful for that. But I came in general studies. So I wanted to do the business school, but they said, hey, you need to come in general studies and you have to get like a minimum 3.7 GPA to get in. So I was like, all right. So the whole year, freshman year, I grinded so hard, and I lived not only in the library, but in the business school, Vinny. And the reason why is because I would see people my age and older than me walking in and out of the business school, but I couldn't go to class with them because I wasn't in the business school yet. So I would stay there in the business school all day, all night, just studying, just so eventually I can get in and be like these people that I was seeing. And I would even act like I would go to the MSC, and I would get a business school shirt, and I would pretend that I was buying it because I wasn't going to buy it until I got in. So I would try to put that vision in my head. Okay, like it's going to happen. You're going to succeed academically, even though you never have before. And eventually I was able to do it. So went through college, became an accountant at EY. And and then I got the entrepreneurship bug never left, man. It never left. So I knew that education played a big part in my life. So I wanted to get into that industry. And I know we're going to talk about Cognify a little bit more, but that's kind of really briefly background on myself.
I love that story. I actually didn't know all that about you. For those listeners, I haven't told the backstory yet, but Paul and I were actually in the business school together. So our paths crossed when we were in college at Mays Business School. So congratulations for that. And then one thing that you said there, which I was going to ask a question when you initially brought up cross country, because that was one overlapping piece of information where I also ran cross country in high school. And then you talked about how good you were at it. And I was going to ask how fast you ran, but now I know that I can't even touch where you were. I always finished about middle of the pack. I
don't even know, man. I think I ran a 9:56 2-mile one-time freshman year, and I was never able to beat it. I was like literally never able to beat that one time.
That's booking it because, I mean, what was it? You ran the 5K in high school. At least we did. And I think I broke 20 minutes a couple times, and that was the best I could ever do. So, yep. And I've gotten into running later in life, and I will say this all the time. I put in some miles, even this morning, 5.07 this morning, but it was like an 11-minute pace. Like I'm just cruising along. I'll stop and walk for a little while to look at something or Just kind of, I do it for the mental aspect of it more than staying in shape. But
Oh yeah,
nonetheless, I thought that's what I'm
miles
saying.
are miles.
No, okay. So it was really interesting to hear about what you had to do to kind of visualize yourself with putting the t-shirt on. I recently have been hearing a lot in the news now. I know mindfulness and kind of manifestation, not to put too many like ego words on it, but the way that people think about it is, you can manifest whatever you want to be in life. Some of the, content that you'll see online is, I guess I'll caveat it with a little bit out there, but it's also got some truth to it. And it's interesting to see when you kind of see an example like you just described, it validates what all these people online are saying about the power of actually manifesting something. Your brain works in certain ways subconsciously that you might not even know about.
Right.
And I haven't seen it come to fruition for me yet, but I've been working on it, tell myself a little bit in the morning, like, okay, you can do this. You're the type of person that does this. One interesting thing I'm excited to get your opinion on now that you've kind of brought up the aspect of manifestation is they say the most, I guess, foolproof, for lack of better words, way to do it is to associate yourself with the identity of someone else. Not just that I'm going to do something or I can do something, but you're the type of person who does something in some way. I think an example that I heard was, don't just, to use your kind of studying example, don't just say that I can get good grades. Associate yourself with, I'm a straight A student or something along the lines of that. And it starts to re-solidify itself in your head. I guess, can you agree with that to a certain extent?
Yeah, 100%. I think that, we could talk about who I've kind of attached myself to, but I think one of the things that you briefly mentioned, I'm a straight A student, that's what I believe. That goes a very long way. And one of the things that I've kind of naturally done, is, and I actually talked about this on the Mave Mastercast, back in college. It was for people who don't know, it's like a podcast for the business school. But one of the things that we talked about and that I truly believe in is if you take whatever original goal you have, how about you just 10x that? Just 10x that. What could happen? Just for thought candy to start off. What could happen if you just 10x'd the goal that you just set for yourself? And what I mean by that is, with Cognify, for example, sure, we want to build a great platform for that students and professors love. But I've already started to think about, what would 10x expansion be like, or what would happen if this company was 10 times larger than what I originally set the goal out to be. It's really great. So with any goal, honestly, just take a walk one day and just think about what would 10 times that goal be. And then just shoot for that, shoot for 10 times more, because then eventually you'll far surpass your original goal, in my opinion. And that all goes with manifestation. You're going to be thinking about, because the more you X that goal, the more entertaining it is to think about, at least in my mind, and the more you're going to think about it, and your mind and your actions will naturally gravitate you towards that.
I'll pull a great example from that, because I like that. Going back to the way we're talking about running just a second ago, when I tell myself that I'm going out there for a 3-mile run, I'm gassed by the time 3 miles comes around. If I tell myself I'm going out there for a 10-mile run, I'm fine at mile 3. I'm still cooking. I'm just getting warmed up. It's just a mental perception of things. It's crazy how that works.
Yeah. It is wild. But it truly 100% works.
Everybody listening, you heard it here first. Go try it for yourself. But no, Paul, perfect segue into Cognify. I am interested in this more than you can imagine. I think it's really, really cool what you're doing. I am excited for you, proud for you, all of the things. Maybe start by giving the listeners your quick synopsis of what is Cognify. And then I want to hear specifically about where you got the idea from. I want to know the details of how'd you go about securing funding? Did you fund it yourself? What was your co-founder like? Where did you meet him? Those kind of deals.
Yeah. So, quick little pitch about Cognify. So we're a course-specific AI platform. So we develop and deploy these AI assistants that are trained to be experts in particular courses at particular universities and institutions. So that's really great for the student. It provides the right context for the students because they have a course expert that's available 24/7. But on the professor-facing side, we have built from the ground up a dashboard that reads all the student queries and relays to the professor what topics students are struggling with and what types of questions they're asking our models, all in real time for the first time ever. So if you look at any foundational model, the professor they don't have a dashboard for that. So there's no insights coming back to the institution. But then on the student side, one of the segues, that was the pitch, but one of the segues into how we came up with the idea was we originally started off as a person-to-person tutoring service. And I knew that AI technology was going to play a bigger and bigger role in the company. I mean, this was just a side gig at the time. But when I started to talk to the students that I was tutoring on the side, at this point, I was in private equity. I noticed that the students were talking about how when they were engaging with ChatGPT or Claude 3.5 or something like that, when they would ask for specific things like, give me some practice questions on this course, the model wasn't trained on that data. So the model had no idea. It would still generate practice questions, but they were all softball because the model doesn't have that context. So that's what students were talking about all the time. They're like, it's a great answering machine, but it just doesn't have the context. And I need the context. So that was pretty interesting. So that's where I started to talk to a friend of mine, a coworker who's also a friend of mine. His name's Austin, and he was a data scientist at that same private equity company. So we started talking about this, and we thought, okay, what would happen if we could take in course data, convert it to more structured formats, because we noticed that LLMs are not good at reading unstructured formats like Word docs, PDFs. There's a lot of images, there's a lot of different fonts, graphs, things like that. What if we can massage that data to be RAG ready so the model can read it better? That will lead to lower hallucinations, and that could pave the way for a truly course-specific AI platform. And that was pretty interesting to us. So I started to talk to the students, like, hey, what do you guys think? We ended up talking to 500 students last semester about, this idea. And I remember, Vinny, and I talked about this on a previous show, but there was an analogy that really kicked this idea off for us. And it's an analogy that this one student said after our presentation. She came up to me and she said, I think that the comparison between Cognify and a foundational model like ChatGPT is the same as the comparison between paper maps and GPS systems. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. I have no idea what you're talking about. But yeah, if you can kind of expand on that, I would love to hear more. And she said, well, both, paper maps and GPS systems will get you to your location, but the GPS has the particular routes that you should take. It knows what time you're going to get to your destination, and it knows if there's any, traffic or anything on your journey. So both things will get you where you want to go, but only the GPS has the specifics for your use case. And that's exactly what Cognify is doing. And I was like, well, first of all, we need to hire you, but also that's exactly what the use case is. So that's what kind of led to the idea. And then incorporating the professor when they were being totally left out was also a great point. So now we have a total double facing perfect system at the
That's amazing. And I love that analogy. One, I hope you end up hiring them if you haven't already. But two, 100%. I'm curious about, how did you end up, I guess one of the things with entrepreneurship in general is, where do I even start? And so I get the foundational aspect of it, of having a little bit of a connection with someone on the data side of things, also knowing the business background of it between both of yourselves, but then going into a field where, okay, I'm out of college at this point. I'm not as exposed to professors as I previously was. What was your path for, this is how I can get in touch with students and actually hear what the problems they're having are? Did you go back to A&M and ask the business school to just, I guess, survey classes or courses that they were having?
Yeah. So thankfully, at the time, I was tutoring for UT students, because obviously I live here in Austin. So I had some connections with the current students that I was tutoring, and I always loved tutoring. At that point, it was literally just a side gig. Work in private equity during the day, tutor at night. But yeah, that's how I started to really, that's how that kind of feedback on the idea started, was just talking to a bunch of UT students. Eventually, we hired a few. I hired a few of them to, book some conversations with fraternities and sororities. Let me get in there and let me just show the idea real quick. We're talking 5, maybe 10 minutes. Probably more like 5 minutes, and just get in there and just talk about the idea and just kind of get some feedback. So that's how it started. Thankfully, the students were extremely willing to do something like that because again, they saw that, this approach would help them directly. So they were more than willing to help out. And
what are you doing to address the competition in the marketplace when you think about, I guess I'm picturing a student who is less inclined to go about learning it the right way and more inclined to pay for notes and other items that were provided from previous students on a platform like Chegg, for example?
Yeah, well, I think that the interesting thing is, unfortunately, Chegg isn't doing too good right now. It's I mean, quote unquote, unfortunate for them. And I think the reason why is because one of the things is a lot of the competition right now is deploying very general, answering machines or AI model, so to speak, or AI platforms. And so there are students that will use a foundational model or Chegg or whatever to get some answers. There's no guardrails for that. Like let's be honest, for OpenAI, it's designed for everybody, so you can't really put in those specific guardrails. So there are people that will cheat using these platforms. But two things: one, if you're going to get into the AI space as a company that isn't, that wants to, have a great use case in AI, there needs to be the right guardrails for your specific use case. And there needs to be, in my opinion, some proprietary, useful, unique data sets behind it. So if you look at Chegg, their business model is totally unraveling because they came out with their own quote unquote educational AI, but it was just a GPT wrapper, unfortunately. So there's no strong use case. So for us, the way that we went is we went very course specific. We want to be RAG heavy. We want to be data heavy on stuff that models are not trained with naturally. So with that said, students have, and we want to put in the guardrails so that it's an anti-cheating platform. So what we saw and what I was interested to see was, okay, are people going to use this? Because you can't cheat with it. And we've have great prompt engineers and we have great fine tuning, but let's see what happens. And thankfully we're gaining so much traction. I mean, we're approaching 1,500 queries per week per course, and students stay on our platform roughly 3 minutes longer than users stay on any other foundational model. And we're talking Anthropic, we're talking OpenAI. They're staying on our platform at least 3 minutes longer, which is great. And it gives me a faith in humanity for sure, because people are coming to our platform because they don't want to cheat. They don't want the answer spoiled for them. And so I think that's really great. So a course specific approach with proprietary data is the way to go. And, I think that's why we're rising. And unfortunately, I think Chegg is kind of seeing some erosion.
Two follow-ups there, because I'm digging a little bit. Number one, how do you go about, you say you want to be data heavy, right? What is the, I guess, approach to gaining all of the information that you need? I don't know how to start an AI model. So, I mean, I'm saying in the event that you want to go out there and collect all of this information and build a database of your own, where's the starting point? And then follow up to that is, how are you gaining trust of professors and allowing them or engaging with them to actually trust this platform?
Yeah. So the first part there, it's I think that what you need to start off with, and what me and my now co-founder Austin, who's the data scientist at that private equity firm. So what we started with was the research. We know that a course specific AI platform could be a good idea. It could be. So now let's actually prove that out through some research. So we spent a lot of nights just researching all the studies coming from OpenAI, all the studies coming from Anthropic, all the studies coming from these independent AI researchers. And it came to be known that one, the data is going to be a major moat in AI technology. I mean, there was an analogy that we read while we were conducting these studies. There's an analogy that, and I hope to do it justice. The analogy was that these foundational models are all going to be like, they brought up Coca-Cola in this presentation, and they said, okay, so Coca-Cola uses refrigerators. Now, the people that made the refrigerators, they were able to make some money, but Coca-Cola knew how to use the refrigeration. They knew how to use the refrigerators to make an empire. And so the theory was that foundational models like ChatGPT or Claude are refrigeration. So we actually use those models, but then we incorporate our data sets and our dashboard into those, we plug that in basically to these foundational models. So with that said, we knew that we were going to be data heavy. So we decided that, based off the research, large language models do not have a good way to read unstructured formats, but they allow people to upload all of these unstructured formats onto their platform. And that leads to a lot of hallucinations. The more files you upload that are, unstructured Word docs or unstructured PDFs, the harder it is for the model to read it accurately and provide a quick response. But if you convert that data to something like XML or raw text, XML is better, but if you convert it to those formats and then upload the model with that same data, the hallucinations will plummet. So that's where we started, and that's where we got to. And then on the trust side, we had to be compliant heavy. You and I, we're in the Big Four space. We know about audit compliance and all that stuff. So we are thankful that we were FERPA compliant, SOC 2 compliant. That was a very, very, rough time because we were building this startup from the ground up. So I think that, showing that we were compliant, showing the audit report directly from the auditor to the client, that we were compliant, it was very nice. But on top of that, before we deploy our models, we have them run through a third-party AI evaluator. So this third party runs the models automatically hundreds of times to test for hallucinations. And we didn't have to do that. We weren't asked by a client to do that, but we chose to do that because it provides more and more assurance that sure, we're a startup, but we couldn't be more compliant with all of our standards. That was huge for us. Absolutely
okay, I've got the $1 million question here. No pun intended. How do you make money? What's the business model?
Yeah. So right now we are selling directly to universities, and we're working, to potentially reach a deal with some textbook publishers as well. So so we didn't want to have one student, like one affluent student, to be able to afford Cognify while another one doesn't. And so on top of that, the fact that we did have the engineering capabilities to build a professor dashboard where the professor for the first time can see AI insights and can see them only on our platform was a real use case for selling directly to the university. So, we started building the platform back in February, and we started to generate revenue from actual universities in September. So it was a really great use case. So yeah, we sell directly to the universities. So with the students, at first they don't have to pay anything. And if they do end up paying, so like the more the Cognify expands, we start off with the research budget of the university. But the more we expand, the more we get involved with like the teaching and learning academic excellence budget of the university. So that does flow eventually to students, but thankfully on a per student basis, it's relatively immaterial.
I think that's great. And I like what you mentioned there about wanting it to be a level playing field across all students, regardless of demographic or socioeconomic background going into university. So I think that's great. I think you're doing the real work there that we need done, helping people get smarter, pass the courses they need to pass, do well in the courses as opposed to just getting the diploma. I am curious though, at a strictly entrepreneurial level, when did you know it was time to kind of make the jump full force into Cognify? Like, what was the turning point for you? A lot of times people get scared of, one, when is the right time, if ever, to pursue an idea? And once I've started pursuing it on the side, when do I make the jump into it and really go all out? What were those decisions like for you?
Yeah, so it was. Well, this is actually a good question because, as you know, when you start off with an idea and you start off in the entrepreneurship game, everything is going to go wrong. Every single thing is going to go wrong. Sometimes all at the same time. So, a bit of a story about how that happened and how we decided to go, full time and when. So obviously, like I mentioned before, it was a tutoring thing I was doing on the side. I saw that the tutoring space, the in-person tutoring space, could be modernized to, a very large degree. A lot of these companies that were making roughly $1 million ARR were, annual revenue, they barely even had a functioning website. So I knew that, Cognify, we have some students on the platform, they're liking it. I love tutoring them, but I knew that if we really modernized our website and made the reservation process super easy, had a perfect hybrid approach where you can be in person or through Zoom at the same time, and some new services. For example, we thought it would be a good idea to kind of place tutors in the study lounges of apartments. That can be really cool because the apartment study lounges are already top tier. So why not just place a tutor in there? So the second you have a problem, you can just raise your hand. The tutor will be right there to help you. So that was all a cool idea. So we actually raised capital off of that value proposition, purely in person. So we raised a small micro seed from a family, Mark and Jen Buknowski, who had just sold their company, so they were looking for something to kind of lightly invest in, and they decided to go with us. So they said, "Hey, we'll give you some capital, spend some time doing this full time, and just try to figure it out." And so I'm like, all right, I'm very fortunate to be in that position. So I went full time. This was, when was this? This was, I want to say, January of this year. So nothing was working though. Absolutely nothing was working. I mean, when I was doing it on the side, I had some co-founders with me. They didn't want to raise capital, but I wanted to raise capital. So we actually parted ways. So right when we were starting this, talking to people that were going to allow us to go full time and explore this, I had to say to them, "Hey, by the way, all my co-founders are gone. But I still want to do this though. I still want to do this." So eventually they believed in me and they said, "Okay, you know what? We'll give you the money anyway. Go figure it out." So the person-to-person tutoring service totally failed. It was not good. Nothing was working. But during that time, remember that I was also talking with Austin about this AI play. So we went back to Mark and Jen and we said, "Hey, I think we should make a full-blown pivot right now. Austin's ready. We know what our approach should be from a data perspective. We've talked to students and they really like the idea. I think we should pivot towards being a technology company, an education technology company." And they said, "Okay, let's do it. We're able to do it." So we came up with an MVP and we raised more capital from there. We raised, roughly $200,000 at a $2.5 million valuation. And then we used that capital and we started to generate revenue from there. And so yeah, that's kind of like the story of when we decided that it was time to go for it. But mind you, I thought that original idea was to go for it. I'm like, we're going to take this to the next level. And none of it worked. Absolutely none of it worked. But we pivoted along the way, which is the name of the game.
How important has it been for you to be able to make those tough decisions and change on the fly and adapt to different situations? I think when I think about it in concept of what the viewers or the listeners might be thinking about, a lot of you out there that are listening to the podcast are considering a different change of major, or you're early in your career and you're not sure if it's the right fit for you, or you're just excited to try and reach for that next promotion tier as soon as reasonably possible. To do all of that takes some serious consideration, some time up front, and then being able to adapt on the fly. To make those big decisions, what typically goes through your mind? Are you strictly focused on the best possible outcome and going with that route? Are you focused on kind of the short term and figuring out what's best for me at this current stage of my life and my career? What is some advice you can kind of give to those people who might be going through something similar?
Yeah, I think it goes back to that 10x goal. I mean, mind you, the more that you amplify that original goal, the more long term it is. So the more you can, the further out you can see. So with me, that's where I start. So I'll take like a goal, I'll 10x it, and then that puts me at like 20 years out or something like that. And what I like to do is I like to take a lot of walks as well. So that really kind of gets my mind kind of running. Okay, I have this goal that I want to do. Let me just think about it. Like not even an action plan, honestly, Vinny. Like I just want to just think about it. Like think like, what would that world look like if I achieved that? What would happen? What would my life be like? And then when you get back from those walks, you will naturally sit down and work on an actual like action plan. But I think the thought candy part is the most exciting part for me. Kind of thinking about what that life can be like, what that reality can be like. And I think that in the process of doing that, you'll come up with a very big why behind why you're thinking about what you're thinking about. I mean, obviously for me, that academic journey that I went through and knowing that people are also going through something like that is what kept me in the education space. So there was a strong why and a strong purpose. But I think that for everybody, like a clear bare bones would be 10x your goal, and then go on a long walk and think about what the hell your life will be like. And I'm telling you, you'll get very excited about what you're thinking about. But also know that when you get obsessed with a goal, Vinny, like, and the people watching this, obsession is when you know that no matter what, you're going to achieve the goal, no matter what. I mean, when my co-founders and I decided to part ways, just when we were thinking about raising capital, we parted ways, and I didn't panic. I mean, I was scared, but I didn't panic. I was laying there with, the budget we placed for Cognify gone, co-founders gone, probably not going to raise money, but I knew that somehow something would happen, and we would figure it out. So that level of obsession of, like, no matter what happens, we're just going to keep chipping away at this goal. That is a very powerful thing. Where I start off with 10x and then just dream about it, think about it, make it all you think about, at least for a certain amount of time, and then the why will show up, and you'll get obsessed about it, no question. I mean, I would love to kind of talk about. I'll stop there for now, but I would love to kind of talk about what obsession means. There's positives, but there's also negatives that I'm personally going through right now. But I'll stop there and kind of get your thoughts on that. I feel like that's a good.
I love it.
That's
I think when you talk about obsession, I heard something interesting the other day in that you can never really become a master at anything without having some sort of obsession over that thing. So in any career path that you choose, whether that be an entrepreneur, if you just want to be the best investment banker, be the best waitress or waiter, whatever it may be, there requires a certain level of dedication and obsession over being the best at it to really master that skill set. And that's applicable across any field. When you talk about obsession, sometimes that gets misconstrued as just completely burning yourself out. So I want to kind of have a dual question here. One, what are your thoughts in more depth on obsession? But two, how do you balance that? What do you like to do for fun, Paul? I know it's not all, just in the office, or maybe it is. Maybe that's where your life is at right now. But aside from going on walks, how do you like to enjoy any free time that you're able to get?
Yeah, I think running is really cool. I mean, that's been a part of my life for a long time. But I think what's cool is I'm a part of a few clubs. So I'm part of a run club, which is actually later today. It's pretty great. Eastside Beer Runners. Shout out Eastside Beer Runners. We start off at a brewery here in Austin. We'll do like a 3 to 5 mile loop, and then there'll be like some beers afterwards, which is really nice. So it's really cool to meet people there. Having great friendships, obviously, going to play pickleball with your close friends and all that stuff is amazing. So that's what I like to do for fun. Also hiking is great. So it's always good to have those things to do, for fun. But I will say that, going off of the burnt out thing, when you're really obsessed with something and it's very fulfilling to you. And what I mean by fulfilling is, this is off the cuff, but like, this is kind of what my definition of fulfillment is striving towards a worthy goal where if you win, a ton of people will see a leap in value in their lives. That's what fulfillment is. I would say a leapfrog in value towards their lives. That's what it is for me. So with that said, having that level of fulfillment, I've felt burnt out with other positions, but with this, it's all I think about, if I'm being honest. And the problem with being obsessed with something is, one, there's a huge upside. I mean, you're going to see a lot of successes, and you're going to be steadfast when things are going poorly. But also, it's 100% worth it, in my opinion. And I think that what I do for fun, it kind of levels that out. But it does get to a point where there's going to be downsides. It erodes your personality, is what I'll say. And that's something that I've experienced. I'm experiencing it right now, actually, we're getting deep on this podcast right now. But that's what comes with some obsession. I mean, you're gonna be thinking about this all day, all night. It's the most important thing that you have working. I mean, obviously, like immediate, your family, and is the most important, no question about that. But right there is the company. And there's been times where I've talked with people, with family, friends, whoever, and it's kind of a halfway conversation, because in the when words are leaving my mouth and I'm hearing words that other people have said, all the while I'm just thinking about the company. And I think that, we're about to raise a Series A round right now, so this is taking up a big portion of my life, and on top of that, we're doing client acquisition. So I think it'll be worth it. But if I'm being honest, Vinny, like right here on this call, I think it's fulfilling for me, but I am seeing some effects of it. It is, you're going to experience some erosion, and you're going to maybe lose some friends along the way. But and what I mean by that is, once you start to make it, people are going to say some things. And unfortunately, that's happened to me, but it doesn't matter, because you just keep going with the goal. But, yeah, that's a long-winded answer, but there's benefits to it. Have some things that you're doing on the side that are very fun, but know that obsession, there's wins, but there's also some things you gotta sacrifice.
Yeah, I heard another good one the other day that you just reminded me of, but all great things are, I'm going to kind of butcher this, and you might know it better than I do, but all great things are hard at the beginning, messy in the middle, and better than you could have imagined at the end. And sometimes along that path to better than you've ever imagined at the end, you're going to lose some people, or you're going to have some lash out at you. And that's just a part of the territory. I do have one other question for you. You kind of alluded to it with a few of the things you like to do in your free time just a moment ago, but how do you structure your day as, kind of building this, what is the analogy, building an airplane while it's flying, like as you're taking off and you're launching more funding, but you're also still having to service the universities that you've already committed to. What do you do in a typical day?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, so I think like my days are usually structured, and this is kind of generic, but I like to keep things in pretty meaningful but overall categories. So my day is usually structured between allocating time between operations, marketing, and finance. So yeah, so we what I like about our team is, and this is what I learned actually in Big Four. I struggled with this at first, but I had a great team at EY that kind of trained me properly. But over communicating with the team. That's the communication is the lifeblood of any organization, in my opinion. So when we bring on a new team member, or with our current team, we do have 3 meetings a week, all like right there in the morning, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, status updates. But then throughout the day, I make it known, like, we need to over communicate. Like if you hear something on Slack, check it out, just see what's going on. I don't, if your head's down, then that's fine, but just check it out, just see what's going on. So I think for me, being able to keep tabs on the engineering team and have a quick response from the engineering team all the time is really great. So that's what I do throughout the day. Kind of keep tabs on engineering, talk to our CTO about the status of what we're doing on the chat interface side, and then what we're doing on the vendor side, and then what we're doing on the future feature side. But so that's kind of what the operations look like. From a financial standpoint, I like to chime in with our investors. I'm on a texting basis with all of them, so that's great. So I just kind of send them some cool updates here and there, not all the time, but every periodically, and we try to plan the announcements of those updates. We meticulously plan them so that the investors know exactly what's going on. So that happens pretty much on a day-to-day, kind of planning what the next communication round is going to be. But then on top of that, obviously right now from a marketing and sales side, I am calling all the time. I'm on the phone, maybe 60% of the day, just cold calling all the universities, or talking with the textbook publishers or something like that. So it's that's kind of what it's been like. So from a marketing, operating, finance perspective, yeah. But then in the evening as well. So real quick, given our funding round in the evening, that's where I really dive into the spreadsheets for our upcoming Series A. So that was like a long-winded answer to say a lot of hats are going on.
Okay. But no, I have 2 more questions for you. And it's one, I just want to say how thankful I am that you sat down and shared all that you've shared so far on this episode. I think this is going to provide tremendous value to people. And I'm honestly just inspired to hear about what you're doing. I think it's really impressive. I'm rooting for you. What I want to know as follow-up is, first and foremost, when you think about the goal looking forward, I have a feeling that these two answers are likely going to be intertwined. But personally, what does the next 5 or 10 years look like for you? Professionally, with Cognify, what does the next 5 or 10 years look like for you?
So one
and like
personal,
I said,
one
they might be,
professional?
kind of intertwined. It's up to you, but yeah.
Yeah, I'll start with given the stage of life I'm in, I'll start with the professional first. Yeah, so I think that what we've seen with Cognify is we are aiming to be a very premier player in the application side of artificial intelligence. So there's two sides of the AI space right now. There's the people that build the foundational models like Meta, OpenAI, and Anthropic. But then there's people that really apply those models, quote unquote, using that refrigeration, so to speak, back to that analogy. One of the major companies right now that are using that is Perplexity. So Perplexity runs off of I believe they run off of Llama 3.1, but I'm not entirely sure. But they run off some sort of model that they didn't make themselves, but they integrate their search platform, their search capabilities onto that LLM. For us, what we do is we integrate our data sets and our dashboard, but there's a lot more to do. There's lesson plan mode, group mode that we're going to be making announcements for soon. But I think that Cognify is going to see large expansion in the education space. But as the years progress, I think that we are going to be very industry agnostic. We have a great pool that is able to ingest a lot of data accurately, and we're able to relay a lot of those query insights to any leadership team. So, for example, a CPA firm actually reached out to us a few weeks ago asking for a demo. And they said, hey, I know you guys are in education, but we can really use this for the people that we're onboarding. So I don't think that we're going to be confined to the education space. I think that we're going to have a learning ecosystem that is going to be the best in the world and is going to be industry agnostic. I fully 100% believe that. And that's going to take place over the next 5 years. No question about that. So I think that we're going to be one of the lead players up there with Perplexity on the application side of AI. So that's where I see us in the next 5 years. Personally, I haven't even thought about that, if I'm being honest. I think one thing I will say is my older brother has one of the, from what I've seen, and I grew up in a great family. I'm very honored to have a very loving family with parents that have the strongest relationship I've ever seen. I want that. And my brother right now is a year and 9 months older than me, and he's on a different path right now. We're both winning in our respective paths. But I look at him and I look at the family that he's built. I look at his beautiful wife, Carly. I look at their 10-month-old child, Grayson, who just turned 10 months old. And I see them and I see true success to the point where I'm intimidated. Like, I'm intimidated to even talk to them because of the level of success that they've had in that world, in that element, in the quality of life that they have. So I think over the next 5 years, I would love to see that for myself. But right now, I was going to say unfortunately, but it's not really unfortunately for me because I want to be here. I want to be in the trench of work that we're currently in. I want to be here right now. But eventually, I do think about them a lot, and eventually, I do want to reach that. But I got to iron out some things on the professional side first, because right now, Cognify and myself are one, so to speak. Well, first of all, Vinny, I really appreciate it. And whenever I'm in Dallas, we're going to either go for a run or go to a brewery somewhere. That's definitely going to happen. But yeah, of course. I think one thing is, I can't give more quality advice than the one that I said, which is like, just 10x your goal and then go for as many walks or meditation sessions as you want to kind of really envision that life and put it into a very, very clear picture. And think to yourself, why do I want this? It seems like generic advice, but it really goes a long way. And on top of that, just know that I feel like I have to say the good part, which is that there's a strong upside to being, very goal oriented and being, having that differentiating type of attitude, and that grind. You're gonna see successes in your life, but just know that it all comes at a cost, and you got to weigh if those costs are worth it or not. I spoke very deeply about what's happening with me and our team right now, but it's all worth it, in my opinion. So for you guys, There's going to be a lot of our own successes. There's going to be a lot of your own successes that you're on the track to do. It doesn't mean having a startup. It doesn't mean this, doesn't mean that. It could. But regardless, just know that you should strive towards a fulfilling goal, and you should be obsessed about something, whether that's family or job or startups or hobbies or whatever. I think that's what life is all about. But also maintain those human connections, because that's also what life's all about.
Let's go. Yo, I'm like an addict, do I gotta have it. I ain't even playing, got a really bad habit. If it moves, gotta grab it. Fuse like a magnet, lose, won't have it till I'm doomed in a cat.